Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking into our latest Trade to Black podcast. I know a lot of people out here have been wondering what's the latest on Ohio and when will adult use recreational sales begin? Well, we got a great guest on here today, including one of the operators with a keen focus on this market. So let's dive into it. Welcome in first, TDR co-host Anthony Varel. Good to see you. How are things?
Good to see you. Good. Another busy day in the cannabis space.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know we've had a lot of discussion during the live stream, but Ohio, I know there's, some COs that are being awarded, obviously, to certain operators regarding their cultivation facilities. But the next step, obviously, is these dispensaries and what can happen next. But most importantly, when is adult use going to go live? So we're going to welcome in newly appointed Chief Operating Officer of Acreage Holdings, Rebecca Kirk, to the podcast first time. Good to meet you. How are things?
Good. How are you guys?
I am very good. I know obviously Ohio's a big market, but before we get into that, I just want to get a chance to know you a little bit more. You've been involved in this space for 30 plus years, which kind of blew my mind away when I was doing a little background prepping for this particular podcast. But you were involved in grassroots cannabis advocacy initiatives to advance federal legalization. So I've got to ask, when we saw some of the data that was released this week from Headset regarding the comment period, and over 92% of people are in favor of rescheduling cannabis. You being involved for this for 30 plus years, do you feel like we're at the turning point where there's actual, real, concrete changes going to happen from a legislation standpoint in cannabis?
I feel like we should be. We should be at that point. We're really hopeful. I think sometimes large events happen that can be a distraction, right? Like, a few days ago or a few days before that. But I think we're there, and we're really hopeful that we see that coming down the pipeline really soon.
How did you get started this? Because you must have been at a really, really young age to being this involved in 30 plus years. But what made you get involved and start advocating for the industry?
Yeah. So I got involved, but my dad had cancer. And he used medical cannabis to treat cancer.
Gotcha.
And we lived in Florida at the time, and it was illegal in Florida. And he grew out of a small collective. He got caught up in a sting, and he ended up going to prison. He moved to California when he got out, and he was just like, I want to do this. I feel like it's revolutionary. I feel like I want to be on the forefront. And I decided to go and kind of follow in those footsteps. So I came out to California really young. I was involved really young, and I kind of moved through the ranks as a grower, entrepreneur. We built quite a few cannabis businesses in California, and that's how I met or came in contact with High Street Capital, which then turned into Acreage.
Right.
Acreage joined me in a venture, and then later I rolled up with them when they went public. So I've been in some way or form or fashion with Acreage or High Street Capital for quite some time.
What a story, huh, Anthony?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as Acreage goes, it's been quite a transformational couple of quarters. The acquisition has been triggered by CUSA. Ohio's coming online. The company's essentially been recapitalized. I mean, as COO, where are your core focuses on the business right now for let's say the next couple of quarters?
I mean, we are laser focused in Ohio. We are in an amazing position with the state. First and foremost, you guys met Kate. You didn't meet her team, but she's amazing. Her team is absolutely amazing. They've been in this space for a long time. Kate came up also in the cannabis industry as well. So we are could not be happier with her and her efforts in this space and how far her and her team have brought that state. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's very rare that you get to be in the position that Ohio is in when a state is about to go AU, right? So we've got a great team, we've got a great business, we've got great assets, we've got great products. So that is a major focus of us, and we couldn't be happier with where Ohio is going and what we expect from that state is really amazing things. Ohio aside, I'm focused on really coming to the market with the best products. I believe, and we believe as a new leadership team, and so does David Klein and his team, that if we have the best products or really amazing products, everything gets really easier here. So that's a main focus of mine as well. And then, gross profit always. I'm looking at the bottom line. I'm making sure that we're getting really good at what we do. Because again, as we kind of look at integration and look at how we position ourselves in this market in the future, my belief is that if we're very good at what we do, all of us, Acreage, Jetty, Wana, we can really have a good place in this
Yeah.
system.
As far as the Acreage Jetty and Wana relationship goes, I mean, I know we've seen some green shoots as it relates to Wana integrating into markets that Acreage is in. I mean, is that going to be, let's say, like a slow phased rollout over the next year, year and a half to bring those brands online in markets that you're already operating in?
Yeah, so our goal is to find synergies wherever we can, but we don't want to disrupt all of the amazing things that each one of us is doing as an independent company either, right? So
Okay.
we're looking at markets where it's really easy for us to work out of the same facility, or how can we help? How can we utilize this platform, or how can they utilize our platform? But in places that it doesn't make sense yet, we have some work to do around that. But we kind of see this as, how do we create, or what do we do that creates a brand driven MSO versus an MSO that kind of drives through their brands, right? So that's really what we're getting our arms around and our focus.
Yeah, I think the brand driven MSO thesis is very important. I mean, we've seen it in Florida, for instance, operators that have brought brands here first versus the vertical integrated brand, and they're resonating. I mean, one of my close friends, Brady Cobb, has actually quite a close story to yours with Sunburn in the state. So I mean, it's good to hear brand driven MSO. I don't think there's not enough light shown around that as far as the strategy goes. And then I guess as far as markets go, like Ohio's paramount right now. I'm sure Ohio will be front and center till probably Q2 of next year. Like, what other markets are you looking at as far as driving growth for Acreage, whether you're in them today or potentially expanding into them in the future?
Right. So we're at Acreage, we're looking to go, like I said, be really good at what we do and go deep in the states that we're in. So we've got Ohio, Pennsylvania. Adult use is very interesting for us.
Yeah, of
We want
course.
to continue our focus in New Jersey, go deeper there, and we've got New York, which is a place for us to really focus on the Canopy USA brands, right? The Jetty, the Wana, and how do we really push through in New York? So main focus is for us.
Would you be surprised if adult use is not, like we keep hearing any day? Have you had any feedback, any updates? And I know there's a lot of investors that are curious to see when this actually does go live. It's imminent. That's all we keep saying. But can you shed any light as to when you think indeed that this will be fully processed, and a lot of the COs, as far as on the retail side, dispensary side, will be complete?
Look, I know the state is working really hard. They're excited. We're in close contact. I'm sure many of the operators are. We've got most of our licenses. We've gotten some of our inspections done. I know that they want to run a fair process, and they want to do it in a really organized way, which is fine for us. We're ready.
Yeah, which is
Whenever
good.
they're ready, we're ready. Yeah.
Yeah, well, another big growth state, that's for sure. Talk about Pennsylvania as well, and rumors about HIT app actually passing. I know we've talked about that a few times too, Anthony, about adult use passing hopefully by the end of this calendar year. But some really, really big opportunities as we're starting to see the space emerge, and a big election combined with that as well. But some key states with key growth states and what those opportunities present. How do you envision, I guess, 2024, the back end of the year for not only Acreage, but the overall industry, and most importantly, a segue into 2025?
I think we need to hunker down. I think we need to get ready for some waves. And like I said, I think people that find success here, or companies that find success here, you've got to get really good at what you do. Got to be good at it. And if you're good at it, then you can ride the wave, right? But I think the times where you just invest in the space and you don't really know what you're doing, or you just kind of make stuff to make it, or sell things to try to sell them, I think it's tough, right? So like I said, I'm really excited to have the brand platform that we do, and then a good production team behind it. So that's what we're doing. We're hunkering down. We're getting really good at what we do, and we're going to get ready.
From a branding perspective, I mean, where are you seeing most of the consumer living? Is it in value? Is it in premium? Are they sitting in like mid-tier products? Like, what does that look like? And are you seeing any congruency throughout the markets that you're in, or does that change when you see like an adult use flip in Ohio versus what's going on in New Jersey, which I don't want to call it a mature adult use market, but they've had adult use for some time now.
Right.
I think it's still really localized, and it's the
Okay.
same with brand preferences as well. I mean, you see the flower is still king kind of across every state. I think
Yeah.
when adult use launches, there's a tendency for a discovery customer to come into play that maybe was in the backspace before. So we see a jump in pre-rolls. We see eventually a jump in vapes. Then later we see a jump in concentrates, but it usually comes full circle and they go back to the flower experience. But we do see edibles kind of inching their way to more of less of a niche and more of a mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every curious person that I know, they start with edibles. They all start with edibles, and then you see the edibles wind up in their fridge, and they just repeat buy and repeat buy.
Yeah.
I mean, with you coming out of California, and I mean, I guess developing your cannabis experience in California. I mean, off topic from Acreage, do you think that California will get it right moving forward? Like, we hear a lot of horror stories coming out of there. I mean, it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the OG cannabis market. Like it is. And I mean, do you see it getting its shit together, to be blunt?
Probably not. I agree. I think it's also the
Like
OG
the honesty.
market. Yeah,
It is.
But I think that cream rises to the top in any world, in any business. And so not sure that California gets it right, but I think the operators there will get it right eventually. I think again, people are getting really good at what they do. They've got to bring their cost to a tenable place, right? I mean, price compression is real, and it's bad in California, and I think it's hard to operate in California for many different reasons, culturally, from a tax perspective, and just barriers to entry, and then staying in business. It's not been easy, right? So.
No, that's for sure. What do you think then, if you take away California from like a legality standpoint, the legal market, what is, in your opinion, is it Florida, which will be the biggest market in the US at some point?
I still believe in California, but I do. And then I believe New York is right up there as well. I just think that rollout has also been difficult. I think, look, I don't envy the position of a regulator. I can't say that I would do it better or I have it solved, because I don't. So I'm mindful about how I talk about these things. But I do think that once California is a huge consumption state, but New York has always also been a huge consumption state. And they've got a really mature palate. They've been very involved with cannabis for, just as long as California. So it's interesting, because when I go and I'm shopping in New York or I'm doing business in New York, I feel like I'm talking to the same person that I would talk to in California. When I go into a state like New Jersey or Pennsylvania, it's a different type of clientele. It does lean a little bit into the medical realm still, and they don't have that brand experience that a New Yorker has or a Californian has. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
You could not have nailed that better, because when we were in New York last time, we went in the adult use dispensaries, and my eyes popped. I was like, they all know exactly what they're talking about. They get it. Yeah. And the products, from a branding, diversity, and just what they look like actual cannabis products. It doesn't look like a medical market. That was very, very well said.
So how's that different than when you guys bring up New York to, say, the state of Ohio, as many people are eager to see get launched?
So, I mean, Ohio's a strong market, but I think they're surrounded by land and space. So I don't think they've been permeated by other, outside brands or kind of the same way that New York has, right? New York, everything comes into New York. It's a hub. So they've got their hands on everything. And like I said, they've had that experience for a very long time. I think Ohio has been a little bit more sheltered and a little bit more of a closed market. So I think they are right for branding, really good products, and exposure. So I actually think that plays out well when a state flips from medical to adult use. If there's not a large outside influence, I think people will go to dispensaries to purchase their products. So I think it's good for a company that exists there now.
How quickly, when you look at some of these states that aren't up to speed, like in New York, you look at some of the growth states that aren't, say, well-versed in the early stages when going live, how long does it usually take before the perception, understanding, and education amongst consumers in those states that you start to see small changes and then quickly change after that?
Hard question as well, right? Because I look at a state like Connecticut, and they're proximal to New York or proximal to New Jersey, Massachusetts. Yeah. And in that state, again, it's a really great state for acreage, but it's hard to operate. They put THC caps in. They made, purchasing is not as easy. And it's still, because it's a very closed space, and they've been very particular about how they rolled out. The consumer doesn't have the full experience, right? So I think conversion there has been a little bit difficult. But I think about a state like PA that's a medical state, and they've got a really strong cannabis culture patient group there, very knowledgeable. So I think it's local. I think it's state by state.
I get very surprised when I talk to PA patients because they get it. They understand it. They understand branding. They understand product, and they get the plant. I mean, with the amount of time you've seen this industry develop, I mean, rescheduling is obviously a hot button issue right now. Do you think that we eventually get to descheduling and legalization at some point in time? Let's say over the next 8 to 10 years, or is that still being conservative?
No, I think at some point we get there. I think it gets there because I mean I know I believe that the voters want it, and it's not as I just think it's political, or I think that sometimes it gets pushed to the back burner. I don't think it's not that it's not important, but like I said, other things become more important, or people have other reasons to move on other things. So
here's something that we've heard and learned over the last week or so. It's not Congress's responsibility to know about this industry. It's our responsibility to inform them. Do you believe that? And do you feel like somebody with your background and what you've done in the past have done that?
So do I believe that they believe that? Possibly. Do I believe that's how they should feel? No. I believe that people that are in office should know what their constituents want and look to understand them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I do believe that it's beholden on us to make sure that we're elevating or amplifying our voices in the right way. I think that that as a cannabis operator, a legacy cannabis operator, I have seen a lot of struggles and kind of infighting, right? And that has hurt us in the past. So I do like to see when we're able to come together and amplify our voice, and it's whether it's through legalization or 280E, it seems like something we can all get behind. So like I said, I think that one's hopeful. I think understanding or breaking the chains around regulations or state specific taxation problems, that's a harder nut to crack.
Yeah. Well, I think the great thing is that we actually have some hardcore data to actually present to people in Washington based off the stories this week with the amount of people that do want rescheduling. And I think once that starts to take place, even over 60% want full on like descheduling legalization, which is another compelling thing. But you make a good point about how there's been a lot of infighting amongst the industry in the past. Do you think that we're changing? If so, like why do you think that was for so long?
So I know I'll speak for myself. I think it was very Machiavellian for a long time. I know when I was young in the industry and I would talk to people, if I would be at some sort of gathering or like social club, they'd be like, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, ag. And they were like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, and they're like, but what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I grow and I work in supply chain, because I remember thinking, I can't tell this person that I'm in cannabis. And if I do, it could, frowned upon or things like that. So I think for a very long time, we were conditioned to be very private with what we were doing and how we were doing it. Right. Yep. Not so much in California, but I can tell you when I lived in Florida, that was not, it was not discussed. Right. Yep. So I think that kind of lays a foundation for a very kind of zero sum game, right? Like if I'm doing this and if someone else is in the space, can they do it? Can we both survive together? And what does that look like? I think it's gotten better, but I do think that created a place where people weren't necessarily open.
Yeah. Well, you got a Schedule 1 drug. It's been classified as a Schedule 1 drug for 50 plus years, but this is why, incremental steps, as you said, Anthony, where people start to shed, look at this in a different light, especially if rescheduling were to happen. But, most importantly, I know Ohio is a big focus and market for you guys, and we're about to go live here, but wanted to give our viewers kind of an update as to what we can expect as far as timeline. But listen, I appreciate you checking in here today, giving us a quick update, and most importantly, best of luck moving forward, and all the best, and let's keep in touch.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. What'd you all think? Is there any information that we're missing? Is there anything you want us to cover? As these industries heat up, we're getting access to more and more big hosts. So let us know the questions that you want us to ask for you. As usual, smash that like button. We want this to go viral. Click on that bell for all notifications for the latest interviews that we're doing. And as usual, Let's build this community. Subscribe to our channel because we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.